Hello everyone, my name is Ben and I'm the editor of this podcast. I'm just stepping in to tell you the story of how this specific podcast came about. Our guest today is Vanessa Hidary, an acclaimed poet and spoken word artist from New York. Vanessa is of Ashkenazi and Sephardi descent, and is widely known for her slam poetry performance on Def Jam Poetry of the poem Hebrew Mamacita.
He asked me out to dinner for the following Tuesday. I declined. Tuesday is Yom Kippur, I will be fasting. You're Jewish? Wow, you don't look Jewish. You don't act Jewish. And he says it in this tone that sounds like he's complimenting me. And I say nothing. I say nothing, which combined with a flirty smile translates to thank you. I say nothing because I got a contact high of someone's anti-Semitic crack pipe. I say nothing because somewhere along my life's graph, I've been swayed to believe that being Jewish is not too cool, not too sexy. I say nothing because I'm in a deep sleep, a snow-white coma, destined to meet my prince 5 years later in the form of stone in Jerusalem named the Wailing Wall.
Vanessa and Josh started talking to each other about the role of Zionism after a few things happened. The first thing was Scott Pirro, a wonderful Jewish online presence, first posted this video, which has been edited to give you the catalyst.
I went to a powerful talk tonight about the ideological war against Jews. And I walked out changing my Instagram bio. Shai Davidai, former Columbia University professor, was the speaker. And I started thinking about something I saw on Adam Louis Klein's page yesterday. Reality, Zionism ended in 1948 with the reestablishment of Israel. It was this Jewish right to self-determination in their own homeland, and we have that now. So I was thinking about that. And Shai's like, we got to reclaim the word Zionism and, be proud of it and be even more Zionist when they say it's hateful. And I've been there. That has been my default. And look at my Instagram bio, used to say gay, sober, Zionist, centrist, stoic. But oddly enough, and this is nothing personal, Shai, in the talk that he was giving, I opened up my bio right then and there, and I changed it from Zionist to proud and loud Jew.
Vanessa saw this and responded with this video, which has also been edited down.
Dear Jews, for the love of God, please stop committing analytical suicide. We finally got this anti-Zionist as a hate movement platform off the ground due to some brilliant minds, and now we're going to overcomplicate and overthink the message and kill the whole thing by saying, but while we're fighting anti-Zionism, let's not reclaim the word Zionism, not because we think Zionism is bad, but because Zionism already happened when we established the Jewish state.
The conversation you're about to hear is a conversation that Vanessa and Josh have been having since that moment. A conversation about the role of Zionism in the Jewish community, in fighting anti-Zionism, and just being Jewish and outspoken in general. Please enjoy and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
My first thought is with our people, our side of the fence, and it's not even an anti-Jewish bigotry or vilification. It's a parochialism and fear.
Yeah, well, and that's my biggest fear, is because all I have now is this community I lost so much of my community. So any of the infighting between people who are generally on the same mission, but might just have a few different ways of getting there, that really bothers me. And I've seen over the last few months a real increase in that kind of hostility. And I'm like, just trying to stay away from that as much as possible.
Yeah, do you reckon that there is, would you say there's a lot of infighting or disunity, or do you think maybe we just notice it because we're like closer to what's going on? And
I think it depends on what circles you're in. I'm kind of one of those people that I'm first of all, I'm in like 75 WhatsApp chats, right? So
post 2023 too. Yeah.
So I am I kind of am in community with people that are super, what I would consider super right wing, super a lot more just like very not at all like budging in the middle about anything. And then I hang with people who are definitely a little bit more to the left. In terms of the anti-Zionist crowd, I'm not really, I can't really concentrate on that anymore. That's just not, I've given up on that right now. And but there is a lot of like political kind of fighting between people. People get angry if someone is a little too liberal, a little too this. You know, there's that organization Betar, and they were like more extreme, and they didn't like this one. And I just try to keep myself open to every circle because I feel like I learn a lot from, sometimes I need a little bit of this, sometimes I need a little bit of that, you know? And I get something from all of it. So I just try to stay neutral in that. But yes, I have seen people, and people call people out by name and be really disparaging. And I kind of feel like if we're all on this mission of that we believe Israel should exist, and we're, you know, Zionists in some, that we're, or I should say that we're fighting anti-Zionism in some way, then we should be a little bit more on the same page.
It's just remarkable how low the bar to entry is for this camp. I mean, I've been, you know, having a lot of conversations and been doing a bit of consulting with the outside the Jewish community organizations, you know, people who are wondering, like, how do I draw up policy that speaks to my university? Or we're representing a client and they are struggling with some of the hatred that they're getting regards to different libels, you know, what do we say? And, you know, it's remarkable how, despite the fact that we've been having this conversation ad nauseum outside our walls, it's kind of surprising when you're like, hey, so just the anti-Zionist is not a critic of Israel. Like, these are very different things. And you've been trying to talk to this person as though you're engaged in a conversation with someone who's being critical. But I can tell you that when my parents came into my room when I was a kid, because I was practicing my saxophone and I was doing terribly and I didn't practice enough, so I would regularly leave the B flat out of the F major scale. And when they came in and they were, you know, criticizing me, it was because they're invested in the longevity of this pursuit. And at no point were they like, you know what, actually, like, if they were like, we don't want this kid to play saxophone, like, what a prick, you know?
Right. Right.
I don't think they would have come in and been like, so actually the D major scale has a F sharp and a C sharp, you know?
Yeah.
I think. And yeah, like, so I feel as though explaining that outside the walls, and then they're like, okay, so what is it then? Well, like, can you explain? Like, if you're not here to eliminate the state, then you're, by all definitions, a Zionist, in the sense that Zionism is simply here to establish the state. And I guess that's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I saw your video about the usage of the word Zionism, and some people saying that they feel as though the word is actually like not appropriate or useful. And you had such a strong reaction to that, which I thought you put it really well. And, you know, I have my own thoughts about it, but my own thoughts on pretty much everything exist in like a couple of strains. There's the, what do I think as I'm ping-ponging this in my head? And what do I think in a practical sense? You know, what do I think when it comes to talking to my people about nuance versus what do I explain to the guy I'm consulting with who's saying, we're not Jews, but we have this one Jewish staff member, and like there's a lot of hate in our Instagram, and it's really weird. We don't know how to deal with it, you know. And I'm not going to come into that comment section and go, well, actually, technically, Zionism is
exactly that, and that's exactly where I just was getting so frustrated because well, first of all, I'm just so happy that now there is attention on anti-Zionism as opposed to just anti-Semitism, because I started to see all of this happening and it being taken over by pop culture. And feeling like there was no name for it. And so it was that people were, kind of feeling morally, morally acceptable to talk about, Jews and Israelis and Israel in a certain way. And I started kind of panicking about it. And I went to Israel, and my mission in Israel was to try to explain to the Israelis anti-Zionism and how it's happening, and how we need them to help us with this movement, and how they don't get that what's happening. It was, I would say, 50% successful, but it was a really interesting mission to be on, because it is different. And I was trying to just explain to them how, because it's not, they know what anti-Semitism is, but they're not in a culture where they're going to concerts and people are on stage and they're like, if you're a Zionist, raise your hand and get out of here, So they're not used to it being this kind of, this thing, this infection that I feel like we're living in constantly and getting worse and spread like wildfire. In my whole life, I've never seen anything spread so quickly. So, and then I came back, and it just seemed as though right when I came back, all of a sudden there was an explosion of think pieces and Substack and people writing about anti-Zionism. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, we're getting it, because I felt like we weren't getting it before. And I didn't really know what to do about that. And I thought that with Maz and like the explanation of it, in like, breaking it down so in the vocabulary of it, was amazing and so helpful to me. And then I was like, going and reading, and then I would get to the part where it was like, don't defend it by saying, and I don't even know if I'm even saying it correctly because I'm so confused by it. Don't defend anti-Zionism with Zionism. Now, I understand intellectually the conversation of it, but, and everyone's dealing with different people. I'm a spoken word artist in New York City. I'm in this very progressive left art scene, or I should say I was. And I am hearing people use the word Zionism that have never, ever used this word before. Nazi, this, and that. They have no idea of the genesis of the word. Now, to come back with the argument per se, like, well, Zionists already exist because the movement of Zionism happens, to speak to people who have no idea of the history or anything, it doesn't make sense, and it's going to fall flat. And my feeling is, we need, the same way that they put out a very practical vocabulary of what anti-Zionism is versus anti-Semitism, and made it its own hate movement, which I completely agree with and understand. I feel like the comeback, and maybe people feel like there doesn't need to be a comeback, but I feel like there has to be some kind of response to it, or some kind of uniting thing that we are saying to people. And I don't know how to do that without saying Zionism is not bad. And I consider, like, I'm trying to normalize, and believe me, it's not a pretty feat to be trying to, make Zionism cool again.
Again.
Again. But like, because a lot of us too have not been using this word. So I've never used the word so much before October 7th, but I surely didn't think of it as a slur. And now I feel like it's gotten so out of control that we need to normalize it more, because we need to kind of take that infection off of it. And I don't see how to do that with saying to people, it seems like what I'm hearing people say is just come back and say something about anti-Zionism and how bad it is, but don't say that you're a Zionist and you don't even owe them that. and just be on the, you don't need to be that you're being defensive or offensive. I don't see it as being defensive and begging for acceptance. I see it as you're calling me, you're saying Zionist or this, Zionist or that. And I'm saying to you, I'm a Zionist, and like, I'm like, okay. And this has worked especially well. I mean, it hasn't worked, but it's been very shocking for me to be saying this to people who I know who have already, and I mean, I've people that I've known for 20 years, and I say I'm a Zionist, and their faces, you know, are in such complete shock. And I'm like, what made you think I wasn't a Zionist? Like, what? Like, I'm not the one that changed. It's like you learned this word and you made it different. But I've never been walking around saying I'm an anti-Zionist, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm a Zionist. Like, it didn't happen that way. And I have found that, as scary as it is, normalizing it by telling people and having them see that, you know, I had this guy, and he was like, you're the only Jewish friend of mine who's going out of their way to tell me that you are a Zionist, and instead of coming to me and telling me that you aren't a Zionist, because he has all these people coming to him and being like, hey, I'm a Jew, but I'm not a Zionist. I'm not this apologetic bullshit that I hate so much. And so I'm like, you know, doesn't mean that I'm going to walk around with like a Zionist t-shirt on, but it means that I'm not going to shy away from it. And if it comes up in conversation, I'm going to talk about it. And I've been owning it, writing in my poetry and stuff. And I'm also feeling like if we're so split between us, we're never going to get anywhere.
I mean, it feels to me like you're really refusing to kowtow to something. You're not, it doesn't feel like you're like on this new mission to make a thing a different thing. It feels like you've kind of put up a wall that's like, actually, no, you don't get to push this wall down and create more damage on my side of it. I get it.
I mean,
I'm into it.
The other choice was, which people have had discussions about, which I did think about. I mean, I've been on quite a journey with this, was to retire the word. Let's just not use it anymore. I had a Jewish friend call it the Z word. Like we can't even say the word anymore. And I have a lot of friends that are very supportive of Israel, but they feel like they make excuses, but basically they're just too scared to publicly say it because of the backlash that's going to come with it. And I call them, they're like the on the fence, you know, Zionists. And I don't see the choice of retiring it. I don't see that as, if I thought that that was a viable option, I might even consider it, but it's not going to happen. The Jews of the world are not all going to get together at a meeting and be like, hear ye, we retire Zionism. It's everywhere. And so now what are we going to do with it? And if we start like kind of letting them take this word, what's next? And would any other culture do that?
Well, I think they already have. And I think like the way I see it, you know, is we know that like for time immemorial, homosexual people have been put in a position where it's not safe really to actually say, hey, I am same-sex attracted, or hey, I'm just not exactly the same as you. And so we kind of then managed to push an entire segment of our community into either hiding it or convincing themselves that they're not that. They're just sometimes a bit deviant, you know, but I'm working on it because I'm not a deviant, you know. And I feel as though we have a really similar experience in every different pocket of the community. When one of us finds ourselves to be a representation of something that's anathema to whatever general society decides is good and right and righteous. And it's actually a lot easier to gaslight ourselves than to try to rewire the world. So many Jews will instead be like, well, look, of course I'm not a Zionist, you know, I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But you know, I do believe that Israel should exist. And it's kind of like saying, it's like saying, oh, come on, gay, I just like to sometimes have sex with men.
Right.
it's absurd. But this is a manifestation of a real kind of moral social problem. And it's not because Jews are inherently feeble, it's because we're part of the world. We assimilate like anybody else, and we kind of have a duty of care to ourselves. And so I think that so many people, without making a conscious decision to be confusing or confused or hypocritical or kowtow to prejudice, find some loophole within themselves that enables them to inhabit both spaces. I believe this is incredibly damaging, but I get very harsh when it's with regards to our own community. I have a very low tolerance for it.
Me too.
And yet when I see it in another community, I have so much patience and empathy for it, And I once I noticed that within myself, I was like, oh God, I just have to
What do you
find.
mean in another community with a similar thing? Or like give me an example of what would be similar.
Like a homosexual male being like, really knowing, I imagine 50 years ago, that it's just not the same. And actually really believing, even like I've been watching Boston Legal, and there's this judge who truly believes he's not gay, and he's obviously gay, and he's gone to gay conversion therapy, and then he sues the gay conversion therapy people because he believes that they didn't offer what they said they could offer. And at no point does it enter into his head that he is being homosexual is real, and that's who he is. And in this process, he continues to do the damage that we see religious zealots do to homosexual people by insisting that they're actually suffering from a spiritual malady. And he becomes part of it, despite himself being a gay man. And when I see this in another person, I'm like, oh God, that must be so hard and confusing to have been conditioned. And then when I see it in our own people, I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with you?
Well, I also think that's because I feel like they're different. I don't know if I would feel that way before October 7th, that I would be judging our community so much as about that. It's like now, I mean, I wrote a poem about it a few weeks ago, like, I'm sorry to be harsh because I've been trying to, even with some of my friends who I said are on the fence, be very caring about it. And, they keep saying, well, I want to be able to, bridge people together, and this pushes people apart, and And the truth is, I mean, I'm going to sound really harsh, but I just believe it's because they're scared, and that they just don't want to deal with the backlash of it. And I get it. I'm not going to, romanticize it, that it's not that bad. It fucking sucks. You know what I mean? I get hate all the time. I've lost a lot of friends. I'm completely out of my artistic circle, but I feel like, in a way, I feel free because I made the decision. Like in the beginning, when I was before I released my very first poem about it called Bad Jew, which was, already over a year and a half ago, I had Jewish friends telling me that were scared for me to do it. And we're like, are you sure? Like, they were like, it's too much. Maybe you should put a little note at the top with the definition. There were all these things that at the time, it totally made sense to me because I was really, really scared. And now I'm like, there's also a freedom with just being like, it sounds crazy, but like being the enemy to people. Like, nope, don't hire me. Like, I already know certain places. Like, I don't feel like I'm in hiding where I'm going to be hired for a gig, and then they're going to all of a sudden discover that I supported this Zionist organ. No, I'm a Zionist. You know what I mean? Like, it's out there. This is the way it is. I feel relieved that, and it's hard because things that come along with that are not things that I want to take on. And this was my problem in Israel, talking to Israelis about it, because for them too, being a Zionist these days is also very associated with a very right-wing government. And my feeling, and again, doesn't have to be for everyone, but it's like, I feel like we have to sacrifice something, and I'm willing to sacrifice right now people thinking that I'm a right-wing, whatever. I'm willing for them to have their perceptions and stereotypes about what Zionism is, because I feel like I can't control it. And that's just the price that I feel like we have to pay to come together with it. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense,
No, that makes sense. It's a principles thing. Like, I'm not going to let them steal what we are and reappropriate it. We don't like anybody. We talk about cultural appropriation all the time, and the moment it could be applied to Jews, we are not allowed. We're told, oh no, actually, Jew, you're probably a little too close to the problem. Like you probably lack the capacity to be objective about the one thing you're an authority on. So we're not going to listen to you. Let us tell you what you're about. Any other place, any other space in the world, someone says that was a microaggression, that was a real aggression, that person's being sexist, that person's being homophobic, that person's being racist. You're not going to be like, oh, hello, African American person. We appreciate that that's how you feel, but as a Black person, you might actually lack the capacity to be objective here. Don't worry, let Whitey let you know, even when we're being mean to you. It's just completely inappropriate.
I always tell people, because I grew up very aligned with the Black and brown community. I have a biracial daughter. That has been extremely difficult for me through all of this, because that's been weaponized against me as calling myself Zionist. So people have been like, how dare you be a Zionist raising a Black daughter? And it's become very personal and very painful. But I learned my activism from the Black and brown community. So that's why it's very hard for me to allow certain things that I know wouldn't go like in another community. Like, I'm like, no, this is what I learned. And I feel as though now, again, I can't put this to the test, but I feel as though other communities will respect you more if you respect who you are. And I know a lot of people don't like me right now, but I swear to God, at the end of the day, I feel like they can say Vanessa stayed true to who she was and didn't just, I think that there are a lot of Jews in diaspora, here at least, that are just so living in this guilt and this, apologetic tone of existing. And I do not think it does us any favors. I do not think that that will get us more respect. I feel as though in the long run, and it's not going to happen right away, people will have more respect for us.
Yeah, I believe that. I also think it empowers us to direct the conversation, as opposed to bending to a conversation that we're not even invited to. And I guess that brings me to really specifically why I wanted to kind of have a chat and hear you out. I wanted to speak to my experience of the word Zionism, and then actually open up to your pushback. Because I thought the way that you did it was one of the few times I've ever actually heard someone I felt like challenged in a way that was important to me. And basically, what you said about the word Zionism is pretty much everything that I have thought about the word until maybe halfway through last year. And I had this pivot. The reason for my pivot was I kept writing about anti-Zionism. I hadn't discovered Maz yet, but I found myself in this realization that when the anti-Semites, when the Nazis constructed the Jew and made all of this propaganda about Jews, they used the word Semite. They were anti-Semitic, but they also used the word Jew. And what they were really doing is they kind of use all these libels to create a fake version of a thing. Yeah. Right? They're not really anti-Semitism is not the opposite of Jews. They're not critically engaging with Jews.
Right.
They create this phantom that doesn't exist,
yeah,
label it Jew, and then people go and hunt real Jews.
Yeah.
And the anti-Judaists use the same thing, obviously, 100 years or 200 years prior, right? And real Jews are the ones that get burnt for non-existent sins, whether it's well poisoning or baking matzah with children's blood, all of the libels. And once again, the fake Jew, the straw man is erected. We use the same word our enemies use the same word, but then the real Jew is the one who suffers. And in writing about anti-Zionism, I was like, oh my God, I've been defending Zionism as though it's 1932, and I'm actually sitting someone down and saying, actually, let me explain what a Jew is. Don't worry. I know what Jews are. You're confused. And I was like, oh my God, they aren't even engaging with the thing I'm defending. They're
Right.
not. Yeah. So like if the anti-Zionist is not even attacking Zionism, and I'm using Zionism and a historical analysis of what a Zionist is to defend it, I never actually engage with what they're talking about. I'm defending a thing that they're not talking about, and they're telling me, well, actually, that's not what I'm talking about. If I was to say in the 1930s Germany, like, no, we're not race polluters, and we're not actually running the world. I'm a Jew, and that means that I do this on a Friday night, and this is what the end of my penis looks like, and this is what I say at the end of Seder. And they're like, yeah, that's all cool. We know about all that. Yeah, whatever, that's Jew stuff, yeah, sure. But we also know these things. And so with the Zionism, it's the same thing. Like, oh, yeah, no, we know about you believe a state should exist, blah, blah, blah. But we also know that your plan is to eradicate the Arabs in the area.
Correct.
And so how do I use my understanding of what a Zionist is against a boogeyman construction of Zionism? So I started to feel like, hold on a minute. If I don't touch the word Zionism, and I only, and not deliberately, I'm not like, oh, I won't touch the word. If someone asks, I'm like, yeah.
Right, but you're not
a low
using
bar.
it as like
I'm not using it as a defense strategy anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, that's really, really different to being like, don't use the word Zionism. No, no, people should identify however they want. And to be a strong Zionist right now, I believe is incredibly important, right? How dare we feel as though we should bend? However, I think about these things in terms of principles and practicalities.
Yeah.
And so right now, when I'm dealing with an anti-Zionist, or when I'm talking Australians through the stigmatization of anti-Semitism and how that could pertain to anti-Zionism, I explain, the more information you give them about you or us, the more time you're wasting. Do not turn your pockets out the front of 7-Eleven when someone calls you a thief. Do not talk about how Syria is also a thief, and Lebanon's also a thief, and Iran's also a thief. You tell them that the reason for calling you a thief is a them problem. Don't explain thievery. Don't explain that there's actually a hungry family at home who need that bread, even if you did happen to steal it. We've gone through so many machinations of explaining, and we've attached the word Zionist to all of them because it's such a low bar. It's such a moral obvious. But for me now, it's like, oh, hold on a minute. Defending my position hasn't worked. I need to attack theirs. And so instead of explaining Zionism, I devote my attention to explaining anti-Zionism.
Right. And I'm wondering if there's something that's kind of like in between that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel as though, like, for example, when I'm using Zionism, I don't feel as though I'm coming from a place of like defending. I don't know. I can't explain it. Like, I feel there's a way to talk about being a Zionist in a very, even if you're using to explain something in a very strong way, and not be doing it as a kind of, no, let me explain what it is to you. It's not this. Like, I think that there are different ways of doing that. And I'm just wondering, like, how, if half the people are calling themselves Zionists and doing this work, and then other people aren't, does that split us in the mission?
What I would say is that, like, from the many MAS trainings I've done and conducted, and the resources I've read and written, I've never seen anyone or heard anyone actually say, don't identify as a Zionist, but I have heard it interpreted that way.
Yes.
And I think because we're so used to being told to be hesitant about the word Zionist, that any whiff of that makes us go, shut the fuck up. How dare you?
But I think also the way it was presented, though, at least from what I saw from Maz, was that it was kind of presented as I don't want to say a command, but like it was like, don't da na 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 na, do this, da 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 da. And so I guess for those of us who have been for 2 years trying to fight back and take in Zionism, we feel like we found this little world that now understands what at least for me, I was like, oh my God, okay, I found my people. They get what anti-Zionism is. That's what I feel like is the most important thing right now, that I'm fighting and I'm in it. And then now you're going to tell me not to say that I'm a Zionist. And so, yeah, it feels like another like place of being policed a little bit, like in that everyone's telling us, you know, don't do this, don't do that. And I just still find it complicated for the people that we are speaking to. Now, if there's a way to do it in a way of, you know, Vanessa, don't always go to, when someone says that, maybe next time go to the explanation of what anti-Zionism is. Like, I can see that as being like this being a tool.
Yeah.
But I can't see it being a tool in hard place of, if we're saying we're Zionists, then we're actually like fucking something up.
Look, I
no other way to put it.
No, but I agree. I actually think the tension here might have to do with the strategic posturing here, in a sense. So like, I think Maz is going to great lengths to basically try to boil down like difficult conversations into directives. And so like, I believe that 9 out of 10 people don't actually want to have the conversation that you're having. They just want to feel liberated from discomfort and to feel as though they're actually in a position to come back at someone with something that makes the next 10 minutes of their life a bit less shit. And so Maz isn't saying, you know, like I speak to these guys a fair bit, and like, I cannot imagine any of them saying, you know, don't do this.
Right.
But I can
like
imagine them
cause
saying
more harm than like, you know.
But I can imagine them saying, like, to a group of people who are asking questions, which are usually like, what do I do when someone says this? How do I get out of this complicated situation at work? What about this person who keeps saying this stuff on my Facebook? Then I think Maz takes license to say, well, just fucking don't use that word now, then. Like, we're just tell them that anti-Zionism is wrong. It's not okay. And when people like yourself are like, whoa, then it's kind of it's kind of like people like yourself should be, because people like yourself should be having these conversations. And I think that the like directive, if it is that, to basically leave Zionism, the word, out of it, is less about like an actual here's what we should unite and do, and more about like okay, we're just gonna like, if we had to boil this down to the placard strategy, you know, which has killed us, because we want everything to make sense all the time. We see one person at one rally on our side and the sign doesn't quite align with our conception of a thing, and we're like, oh my God. But then you look at the other guys' rallies and all of the signs are mutually exclusive. You've got baby killer next to pedophile. How does that work? What kind of baby killer, you know, what kind of pedophile? You know, this is a conflict of interest here. And we are so, and so I think like, you know, your reaction to this was kind of like, yes, that's definitely like, these are the conversations we need to keep having, because we need people to know, I believe that we need people to know that when like strategic directives or ideas are put forward, it doesn't mean, hey, everyone fall into line, we're going to say this now. It means, hey, like this might work in a lot of areas, but like, for God's sake, there needs to be a space on our side where we can keep having these conversations and hash things out. And I don't know, I don't see it, when I see it on the other side, I cut my teeth in the far left. And so my algorithm still coughs up a lot of that stuff. And, you know, I still subscribe to a lot of that stuff, to be frank. And yet I don't see any area for budging. And when people do budge, they get cast out. And I was like, I saw what you said and I was like, this cannot be a problem for us. This has to be a thing we embrace. We have to be able to say, if you are a proud Zionist, be a proud Zionist. And if you're in conversation with someone who is denigrating Zionism, it's not immoral to leave the word Zionism out if the
Right.
task at hand is to just nail them on their bigotry. Like
Right.
a Jew in 1932 Germany, they're like, if you want to explain what's wrong with Nazism, do you help to better categorize the Jew? Well, actually, we invented this. And okay, let me tell you about the chili tomato, like, can we do more of the things about, and it's like,
Right.
actually, we don't need, we can't, And so I think their attitude is just, when it comes to the stigmatization of anti-Zionism,
Yeah.
explaining what Zionism is doesn't work. But outside of Maz's only goal here is stigmatization of anti-Zionism, right? Because they believe that's the best way forward right now. So like within that framework, I think like probably like spending too much time on explaining Zionism to people won't be that helpful. But in a broader context of Jewish advocacy, I think that, at least for me, that changes. That changes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that the people who are Jewish and are going to go out and talk about the problems with anti-Zionism are eventually going to be asked by the people that in their world who are of a different world and who see it as something really bad. Wait a minute, are you a Zionist?
But
yeah,
if you successfully explain to them what an anti-Zionist is,
yeah,
then that question they have to ask you back is no longer a stigmatized version of Zionism. So you get in before. We like don't explain Zionism until they understand what's wrong with hating Zionism. So by the time you're in that position, they're like, what the way that they ask, are you a Zionist, is kind of not, it's not the same question as it was 10 minutes before. So I think that's the strategic advantage to pushing the like explanation of Zionism behind the stigmatization of anti-Zionism, in the same way that I would say like it's important that we let our kids know racism is bad instead of educating them about how all of the different types of people have inherently good qualities.
yeah. I feel as though if someone can do that in a way, when you're explaining why anti-Zionism is a hate movement to someone, it has to be in such like simple, fast, like direct language, like depending on who you're speaking to. Obviously, if you're doing that with a scholar or whatever, but like I'm doing this with like Joe I grew up with across the street, who's like, Zionists are pedophiles and blah, 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 and never used this word till 2 years ago. And so I'm going in fast and quick. And I've got 2 lines to kind of, you know what I mean? Also to keep it kind of, because I find that when you keep things, maybe that's the writer in me, but personal. I have found that sometimes I give these diatribes and I'm like, I put in one personal example and I'm like, oh, that was the best part of the whole thing. Like, I don't even know if they're going to read that whole thing. So I believe in the personal monologue and the personal story to kind of grip people in, and depending on who it is. Now, if I'm sitting down and I'm having an hour coffee talk with someone, I feel like that would be very helpful to explain to them first what anti-Zionism is and and the difference between that and anti-Semitism and everything. But all they see is Zionism, that they're doing it. They're just criticizing the government, and the other stuff is Jew hate. They see it very separately. And then they've learned that this word is different from a Jew. So basically, they have put us in a position now where you have a litmus test on, what kind of Jew do I want to be today? So I still can be a Jew in society, but am I going to be a good Jew or am I going to be a bad Jew? And so in a way, I kind of feel like it almost gives us so much choice in that too, because it's like, I'm a Jew, but I'm not a Zionist. Okay, you're still welcome here. If that makes sense, you know?
Definitely.
And I just feel like it becomes too heady for people that, now again, maybe I'm not dealing with the most intellectual bunch all the time.
None of us are.
But, you know, like most of the people who are arguing these things have no skin in the game, have never expressed interest in the Middle East. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I once got, over 12 years ago, I was going to perform somewhere, and a group of Palestinian women came. This was even before Instagram, and were protesting my performing there, saying I was a Zionist. And no one in the spoken word scene knew what that was. So nothing happened. It didn't go anywhere because people were like, what is she calling you? We have no idea what's going on. Da, da, da. Cut to now, no Zionists allowed. It's like their favorite word, blah, 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 blah. So I've had a journey with this. And that moment just like really taught me to kind of not like, you know, eke out of it. I just kind of feel like when we're not, and I understand what you're saying, like I do think that I could have some tools in my toolkit that are really good, like kind of lines to come back with that are explaining the hate movement of it rather than just kind of explaining what Zionism is. And I think that's really helpful, but I can't see doing that in lieu of talking about being a Zionist. I feel like they have to be together.
Well, I think telling someone like yourself, who is obviously such a good advocate for what Zionism is, to like maybe hold back on that is just self-defeating, right? Like I truly believe that a lot of people out there most of us are bad advocates for the things we care about. That's just most people, right? Like
Yeah.
myself included, you know, I botch it all the time. And that's fine, you know, like we all suck a bit, but you prosecute what Zionism is really well, and you prosecute your right to be that and the importance of being that really well. That anyone who was to say, oh, Vanessa shouldn't be doing that, doesn't understand the role she's playing here. The real question for me is whether most people can actually do it as well as you. And if they could, why aren't they? Because most of us are. Most
Well,
of
I
us
would
can.
think
So,
that, you know, like the video that I made this reaction off of was this guy, Scott Piro,
yeah,
who has the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And maybe it was because of the way he phrased it, because he was like, I'm taking Zionist off my bio and I'm just going to put loud, proud Jew. I totally understand because he was seeing it as a reclaiming something like, I don't owe you anything and blah, like, you know, and I get where that's coming from, but I don't think that these people who hate Zionists like give a shit about us owning and not, I don't think that they're in this heady thing that we've kind of gone into. And so for me, I guess I feel like, and maybe I can see it in a different way now a little bit, is no, we don't need, and I don't even have it in my bio. I don't feel like that's necessary for me. Like I said, I'm not someone, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I'm not going to walk around with a Zionist t-shirt and get screamed at all day. Like, I'm just not, you know, and everyone has their choice to do whatever. That's not really me. I will do it with my writing and do certain things. But I just didn't like the message of, now we're going to take this out of our bio. We're going to stop, like, less Zionist. And I'm kind of like, I just feel like we need to normalize it more.
Yeah. I get it. Like
it's not as like dangerous and hot to the touch.
I just think that most people can't normalize it like you can. And I think this is a concession, you know, like this is the sad reality. You know, I think that I have kind of been a bit of a Jewish exceptionalist in that when Jews disappoint me, when Jews disappoint me at an individual or an organizational level, oh, it fucks with me like differently to when the real world disappoints all the time, because the real world is as wonderful as it is sordid, and it sometimes gives me things to just have so much hope, you know, and awe and wonder about, and in the next moment a child is under rubble. You know, it's just, disappointment is everywhere all the time. It's part of life. But for some reason among our people, when I find myself disappointed, it hits different, especially at such an existential chapter. And so I think that the disappointment, like that, those Jews who seem to be so into the, like, you know, the Zionist t-shirt types, the big chain with the Z on it, you know, and it's like, oh, you know what, actually we also have a role in the obnoxiousification of the word. And I reckon that there are a lot of people who can do the word Zionist justice by embodying it truthfully and honestly. And there are a lot of people who actually are a lot closer to things that anti-Zionists already hated. And like, my opinion is that they should be able to do that. You should be allowed to wear a MAGA hat. You should be allowed to wear a hammer and sickle. You should just be able to be that. But at a time when this anti-Zionist witch hunt is everywhere, and we're expecting that by using the word Zionist, we'll be able to defeat it. I think my interpretation here is that wear the big chain with the Z on it. Wear the I am a Zionist t-shirt. And when someone attacks you, are you an anti-Zionist? No, I'm just criticizing Israel. Oh, good. There's nothing mutually exclusive with criticizing Israel and Zionism. If there was, there'd be no Zionists left. Come to Shabbat.
Right, but then you're explaining what Zionism is.
Yes, but through the lens of what's wrong with anti-Zionism, you
Right.
know? And it's not at no point there did anybody explain how good Zionism is. They simply defused or
Right.
decoupled Zionism from its anti-Zionist framing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the logic here. It's like, oh no, you don't get to. It's not about saying, actually, let me tell you about Herzl. So yeah, I feel like today when I get the anti-Zionist shit, I used to become this like amateur historian, and now I'm like, before I even get to what Zionism is, I usually don't have to anymore, because it's just straight up, oh wait, sorry, are you an anti-Zionist?
Right.
Okay, and then you put it on them. You explain that to me.
Right.
So don't have the Jew explain the thing that you're attacking him for. You explain the reason that you have an issue. And I can really very quickly defuse the situation by letting someone know, oh, I think you're confusing anti-Zionism with criticism of Israel, because they usually say something like, oh, Jews say that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And I can say, no, let's talk war crimes. You want to talk war crimes? It would be statistically impossible for the IDF to not have done a war crime. No army has made it this far into a war without a war crime. We've all seen the children under rubble. We can have a conversation about how that happened, who's responsible. I would argue that anti-Zionism has continued to push this area into war ad nauseum for 80 years. You may argue something different. We probably should just establish, that I would quite like to know what you mean by criticism of Israel, because it sounds really different to anti-Zionism. So you can entirely sculpt the 15-minute conversation you were going to have where you're interrogated and we keep having to say, actually it means this, actually it means this. You completely reverse the power dynamic by saying, oh my God, sweetheart, I love your enthusiasm. I love the scarf. It's really interesting, cool scarf. I was wondering whether or not you knew what anti-Zionist means.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're just being critical of a state, and being critical of a state at war is a moral pursuit. We should all be critical of states at war. Come to Shabbat, we can be critical of the state at war, right? And it's at that point that they realize that nothing they have against Israel has anything to do with Zionism.
Right.
All these Zionists absolutely fundamentally agree with, I always tell the story. I was at anti-Netanyahu rallies for quite a while before October 7. Never saw an anti-Zionist there. A lot of Zionists. What were they doing there? Criticizing Israel.
Right.
Why wouldn't they? These things diffuse the anti-Zionist, and at no point did I have to say, this is about the protection of Jews in the post-Holocaust period where, we don't have to discuss the Nakba. We don't have to discuss Holocaust inversion. We don't have to have the Shoah shoved down our throat and repurposed, repackaged using a different word and told that actually it's about, the excommunication of other people. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff. And my sympathy for Scott Puro on this one is that, I think that's what he's probably trying to say, but it's so hard in and it's Scott, he's like,
but there are a lot of people who agreed with him. And I think that that's the problem, is that I felt like it was kind of split half and half. And then I'm like, wow, this is splitting us. And I know I'm not the only one that is confused by that one element of the anti-Zionist Zionism movement, is that it's been like, and then I feel like people explain to me, like, when you get it, you're going to get it. Like, I feel like I'm learning this like meditation technique. And when
It
it
sounds
finally,
like AA.
they're like, when it comes in you, you're going to get it. And I'm like, I still don't get it, guys. And people, when I say I have listened to every single podcast interview, like, and I leave with the same confusion. And I'm just like, it's not that I don't understand it. I don't see it as actionable. And I'm wondering maybe that some people like me, that things need to like kind of be, because I would keep asking, no one ever answered. I would comment under everything under like Adam's post, but like no one answered me. I was like, so what do you say instead? Give me an example of a line. Because I feel like people need, like, now I've gotten much better at my comebacks. It's taken me 2 years of research. I think about the things that I said 2 years ago and I'm like, oh my God, no, I didn't have the vocabulary for it. But there are people who literally need like lines. So when we're saying like, no, don't come back and say don't come back and defend Zionism, I think that needs to be like much more actionable for the person who's not like, thinking so much in that way, but who's just dealing with everyday people.
Yeah. I feel like it would be a smarter way to phrase it would be not to say, not you, I mean like anyone giving these prescriptions, would be not to say don't, defend Zionism or whatever, but instead to say like focus on anti-Zionism, make them explain anti-Zionism. Don't explain Zionism until they've explained anti-Zionism. That's how I would put it.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me. And then there are people who are still kind of learning how to explain anti-Zionism. Like, I just think we have to like kind of do the like anti-Zionism for dummies a little bit more.
Yeah, I keep getting this. I'm trying. I think it's just we just have like conversations like this, for example, make it easier, because then it means that like, as I go through the rest of my work day, I'll like think of stuff. And then tonight when work's over, I'll be like, cool, like what can I take from that? And we can keep distilling and distilling. And, I know that like the guys at Maz, like Adam, he's just writing constantly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that, it will be distilled and distilled. But also I feel like it's kind of our responsibility to be the guys to do that. And I feel like we kind of already are, like even in these conversations. And, the academics are going to academic. And then it's like in every other context. I mean, the scientists explain how an airplane wing works.
Yeah.
And then the teacher explains how to explain how an airplane wing works.
We all have our different roles in it. I mean, I'm a New York City spoken word artist. I'm going to have a different energy and effect. And that's good because people relate to messages differently. And so my feeling is, and I love the fact that, I mean, look, how could everything be perfected and ready? Like, this is a new thing. We've never been through this before. So we're living through like someone creating a curriculum that's going to be like years from now in a book. Like, it's really kind of amazing in that way. And so I believe that it's happening in real time. And I just like, I want to be part of that, that language, because I just want to make sure, which is what I said in my other thing, that we don't overanalyze ourselves to death and that we stay present, because that's just who we are as people a lot. And it's the amazing part of us. But I think we also have to be very like hands-on and kind of like, in the moment, passionate and kind of speaking to people in people terms. And I guess that's where like I come in. So I feel like there's a way, now that I've spoken to you, of doing both, kind of phrasing it in a way. But I like the idea of having certain tools on hand where I don't always have to go to Zionism to explain it. but like you
Yeah.
said, not shy away from it. But I do think that there are people who are going to have to deal with the fact that if they start talking about anti-Zionism as a hate movement, people are then going to ask them, like, are you a Zionist? And they're going to have to deal with answering that question.
Definitely.
And I know
think,
certain people that makes them really uncomfortable. Like, I'm kind of moved past that and I get it, but there probably was a time where that would have been a lot harder for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the only thing I'd kind of close that out on would
Yeah.
be to say that, after the, anti-Zionist, you put it in there, cool. What do you mean by that? Sorry, like, what's an anti-Zionist? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then it gets to because like I believe that insisting that they're the one with the problem.
Yeah.
Explain the problem first, and then I can, if it's necessary, I'll explain what this word means. And so, once they've done their part and they're like, so then, what's a Zionist to you? This really patronizing, like, oh, so like, I guess there are lots of different types of Zionists then, like, well, I guess like technically there's lots of different types of food, but they all perform the same fucking function.
Right.
Don't they, right? Like, I have a caloric intake, I turn it into energy, and then I shit out the waste. Like, it's just, Zionism is quite simple. But I think that once you get to that point, we're in a position where it's like we've decoupled the Zionism from all the bigotries that you were going to have to explain. And it really is just this boiled down. And so much of I believe that so much of our explanation of Zionism is defensive because we don't go on the offense first. But once we go on the offense first, fucking ruin the bigotry, all you're left with is a few truths. And I think that, I haven't spoken to Scotty about this directly, but, my interpretation, my hesitation last year that I explained around opening with Zionism wasn't because I don't want people to know that I am, it was actually more about, this idea of like, you don't get to fuck with things that I am until I fucked with what you are. Like, it's actually you're causing the trouble here. You're an anti to a thing. You need to explain why you're anti to that thing. And it's an order of operations thing. And I'll have a look and see like if I can put anything out. Maybe we could even work on something together. I'm not sure, but there's got to be a way of making it really clear that, like,
it's not perfectly clear. And also, I know you guys are still dealing with, like, I'm one of the people that it took me a minute, but now I get that anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism, like in terms of it being its own separate movement. But I have to tell you, a lot of the comments in my thing were, you know what I mean? Like, you guys are like, there are a lot of new concepts you're introducing. So I was like, I get that concept. And I was like, so excited that I got that concept. But there were a lot of people who were pushing back on that. It's just pure anti-Semitism, pure and simple. So there's a lot we've been conditioned. There's a lot of unpacking to do. And I think that first part is easier for me to understand, the second part, but I'd love to help if there's any way, and kind of trying to, make it clearer, because I know a few people have expressed to me the same thing about the confusion, and I wouldn't want that to stop someone from being involved.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we need to frame confusion as like an organic, necessary, and very healthy byproduct of re-strategization, as opposed to like splitting and like threat and, oh no, now we're different. Now we're having an infight. Are we having a fight? It's like, no, we're not. We're trying to get our head around this whole new thing. We're kind of rearranging the furniture a bit.
In process. And that's what I was trying to say in my video. And that was why I didn't appreciate that. I thought people were trying to be like, oh, are you dissing someone? Like, I'm like, no, I'm trying to say, I love this movement. I'm a huge fan. Like, oh my God, thank God you guys did this. I'm just trying to say, I'm struggling with this one part of it, and I want us to be united. So I think, and thank God that's exactly what ended up happening. One thing I just wanted to say before I get off that popped into my head is that, remember during like the whole Black Lives Matter movement, there was something happening with the Black community that was a new tactic of, it's not our responsibility to teach you about our history, about what's racist. Now, I haven't found that that's been as easy for us to get away with, and that people who are, and then, there were all these white people running to the bookstore like, I'm going to learn. It's not your responsibility to teach me. I'm wondering if that is a little bit of what's kind of being said here. And if there's something to take from that, and if we could, I don't know, it just popped in my head and I wanted to use another example of another movement that came out with that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right about there actually needs to be social capital involved in people's quest to educate themselves. This is not an altruistic movement among blossoming minds in the white community, whatever that means. Yeah, so the lack of social capital makes it just, they're not going to be like, oh, I should go and educate myself. And
I'm gonna go read up about Mizrahi Jews tonight.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then when's Mizrahi Jewish month? When's that? And then the worst part is that when someone's finally ready and they're like, you know what, I think I should learn more. Some fucking 80-year-old crone is like, here, have my copy of Anne Frank.
Right, exactly.
You learn about the little Jewish girl who died in a basement.
Right.
It's just, it's so obscene. And so, that now that, we know that part, we know that it's not going to be cool. And even if when we force their hand, we fuck it up. But I think that this idea of let's just say you're at work and some guy keeps asking you out, and then keeps kind of, maybe he's touched you on the shoulder inappropriately, or he's kind of made some lewd jokes, and as a woman that this is something you deal with all the time, but it doesn't make it okay, and you're at work, and can you just fuck off? Now, it's so good that we live in a society where I know that if one of my sisters experiences that at work, they can just say, this guy's making me really uncomfortable. I think it's a bit sexist. I just don't think he would exert his power in this way over a man, and I'm not really into it. Something's got to be done.
Yeah.
And the school is going to be like, oh shit, we need to deal with this.
Right.
Or she could say it to his face. Hey, I'm not going to take this to our boss because I know you're a married man and, you must have got the wrong end of the stick here. But this is not happening. It's making me very uncomfortable. It needs to stop. We live in a world where so many different historically marginalized communities feel increasingly safer to put their foot down. And so perhaps it's not necessarily that we're going to immediately get widespread community assent to be strong in our anti-bigotry and, defense of ourselves. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't start. And I actually think mostly about the kids I haven't had yet. And I'm like, what kinds of conversations do I want them to be able to have? And it used to sound like an explanation. What is a Jew? What is a Zionist? What is connection to country? What is indigeneity? Right. What is persecution? And now it's, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right. But now it's also in a place that because the word Zionist has gone into it, I'm thinking about so I have a 17-year-old niece, and she's in high school, and she goes to a school in New York. There are a lot of Jews and stuff, but she happens to go to a high school there are only 3 or 4 Jews in the school. And there was a rumor going around the school that she was a Zionist. If you can fucking believe this shit, in Manhattan, because, they know that she comes from that she's Jewish, and there are not that many Jews there. And she comes from a proud Jewish family and everything. And she handled it really well, but this is what's happening. And she's amazing. And she's kind of not back down from that, but it still affects, I don't think that she could go tell all her friends if she's going to Israel. And that's what I was trying to explain when I was in Israel, is that if we don't get a hold of this anti-Zionism thing, we are 3 to 5 years from our kids. And now that I do have a kid and I have these nieces, of you being ostracized by going to Israel or having anything to do with Zionism, and those things are together. And that for me is what wakes me up every fucking night. Holy shit, I need to do something.
Yeah, but serious question. I think this probably boils the whole conversation down. The school notices that this is happening, and the school said, hypothetically, of course, we live in a world where the school
Yeah.
gives a shit, and the school says, okay, so we have a child being ostracized for being a Zionist, and because we're adults, we consulted the dictionary, and it sounds to us like, but let's just say the school has to have a response, right? Any school would have a response.
We
You'd
need
expect.
to have language.
So let's say they get everybody into the school auditorium or gym or whatever, and they're like, all right, we're going to tackle this. And they have to choose one of two. Do they, A, do a 2-hour presentation, an interactive presentation on Zionism and why this rumor makes her not a bad person? Or
Right.
B, do they do a 2-hour presentation on where this rumor comes from and why it's so bad, on anti-Zionism?
Yes, no, I think that's way more productive. And that's why we need to have the language for it. But I feel like within that conversation, the concept of being a Zionist is going to come up in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like they're related. But yes, I think that the framing, that we need to have this vocabulary. So you're going to go in, and the kind of premise is going to be, let's focus on anti-Semitism as opposed to focusing on Zionism. Absolutely, 100%. And we need to have that language in schools, in institutions and stuff. I just think that there needs to be a clause or something about how to deal with the Zionist part of it, because then people like us who are kind of like been dealing with it more, but other people, I think that if they don't have like a distinct kind of way to frame that the same way we're framing all this other language, we're doing it so clearly. You guys are like this, that, whatever. I don't think we could just leave out the Zionist part, because it's going to come up.
I just feel like it's been done so clearly so many times,
Yeah.
and no one's listening. And every different organization, group, advocacy person, like we have all done some, and like all I take away from it is that it's not that we shouldn't, it's that we put the cart before the horse.
Absolutely. But what if it's saying something about it, but it's in the context of this anti-Zionism like lecture? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it should just be like, oh, let's just throw in what UJA was doing 10 years ago into this lecture. I think it has to be tailored for this.
Yes.
But I think that Jews have to be prepared for Zionism, and it can't be like, well, we're not going to discuss that, or it's kind of like, I'm going to so out whatever that you're not even going to be able to ask me about that. Like, I think there just has to be language for it.
Yeah. I agree. I can't help but wonder if in all of our explanations of anti-Semitism for so long, I never actually really heard anyone explain, and by the way, this is what a Jew is and this is what a Semite is. We just learn about the hate. And it's kind of inverse, right? If people actually had a better understanding of what a Semite is and what a Jew is, if that disambiguation was included somewhere in our conception of anti-Semitism as a pure bigotry, that might also have helped us too. So, looking at it from the other way, I feel like there is no one or the other.
No, and if you educate, I mean, I'm also very involved in, I just did a lecture with with Jimena, the Sephardic Mizrahi organization the other day. I'm a Syrian Jew, and that's another way too of breaking that people wouldn't be asking as much and thinking of Zionist as this white colonial settler if they knew what the hell a Mizrahi Jew was. And so when I post these pictures of my great-grandmother my great-grandmother was born in Hebron in Palestine. So people were like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And it was just representation, but that will also take that stigma off that, if that makes sense. Like, it's all in conjunction.
Yeah. My partner's grandmother is Palestinian Jew. It's funny. She was born in Palestine, considered herself Palestinian. Before the creation of Israel, I think 1936 she was born. My grandmother was born in Budapest in 1933, and her birth certificate says Israelite on it as a nationality. She'd never been, her parents had never been, no one in the family had ever been there. But, you know, the Europeans were consigning the Jews to a country that hadn't been invented yet called Israel, but also had long since been understood to be Israel. And yeah, so it's interesting, the complexity. And my partner's grandmother was telling us, she was with her brother, who was also born in the British Mandate Palestine, and they were driving along, and they drove past an anti-Zionist rally, and they'd kind of got out the car, they were going into a museum, and they were yelling something with a big sign that said, "We are all Palestinian." And you know, one of them was just like, "It's just so bizarre that like we're Palestinian,
Right.
know? Like, what do you like? It's these, and that's not to say that they're going around today identifying as Palestinian. And you know, I do think that the Palestinian now is a distinct kind of cultural identity. And I do think that it would be kind of disingenuous for Jews to be like, actually, we're the real Palestinians. Like, it's not really.
No,
but if you were fucking born there,
I mean, that's why I say that, but I'm not one of those people that's like, it's never really was a country. It never did exist. Like, I just don't have time for that right now. It is what it is, and we're here, you know. But yes, my great grandmother was born there. So it's like, how do you, I mean, but that's part of it, at least and I think it's like that in Australia too, that there's a big like race element put on the Zionist thing. And that's what I'm most attuned to, because that's where it's manifests itself mostly. And so we have to kind of be aware that the more we kind of bring in the diversity of the Jewish people, that's also helping with the, you know, destigmatizing Zionism, because one of the stigmatizations, it's not just baby killer, it's white.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it. I don't know if there's anyone in the organization. Is there anyone there who's like Mizrahi or Sephardic who's like working at all on it?
Well, on just a semantic note, Maz is very, very not an organization that's there.
Right.
But I know what you mean, but just for the record,
right.
not an organization.
No, I was just thinking about,
I know what you mean.
Like when this happened, when I posted that video, I wrote, I don't know if do you follow Abraham Hamra?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. He's a Syrian Jew like me, but he was born in Syria and came here in the 90s. And he's a lot. He's like a big, loud voice, but he's smart as hell. And he's an amazing representative for us, because he is like, he goes to these marches and he speaks fluent Arabic. So all the white people are like, what? Like so fucking confused, because he's like, I'm Jewish, you know, I'm Yehudi, and I speak Arabic. And he's just this amazing, interesting voice. And I kind of discussed some of this with him about the Zionism stuff within this. And, you know, we have conversations about it. And I guess the only reason I'm bringing that up is because I think that it's important that we take in all the different energies, because there are different energies of the Jews that are wanting to be in this anti-Zionism thing, but are, I mean, yeah, in the movement, but are coming from a different cultural place about Zionism and stuff.
Yeah, I can think of two. I don't want to name names because I don't know who is like publicly involved in Maz and who isn't.
Yeah.
But I can think of two. I know like Adam and the Maz website like have gone into a bit on, you know, how anti-Zionism is like such a deliberate rejection of the Mizrahi Jew, like because the Mizrahi Jew blows anti-Zionism out of the water in so many ways. So they have to pretend they don't. Yeah, they like have to pretend. It's interesting, you know, for an anti-racist cohort or a self-described anti-racist cohort, that they have to render like racial difference invisible for their calculus to work, for their hate to work. It's a fascinating pathology, the anti-Zionists, I think. But
and it's really, really a huge part of it, the circle that I'm in, because it's really white is Jewish and the brown is Palestinians, to the point that they really believe that Palestinians are like looking at themselves as Black, which is absolutely like absurd, that they think that, and that they think that they're not racist and that Jews are racist and they're one, those are their brothers. And like it's this complete illusion. As someone who's grown up like in like, you know, the a lot of like the Arab world and whatever, like I know what the racism is like in there. I'm not saying it's not in the Jewish community, but to act like they are less racist is absurd.
Oh, these people are living in like a very cartoonish version
Yeah.
of reality where there's goodies and baddies.
And I just think that we're such like, and the reason why I brought up Abraham Hammer is because he couldn't be more different than like putting together, I feel like, this academic, like, you know, language, but then he brings this different element of like we're talking about, like just the people, like the thing, you know, and is also very smart and educated and has lived the life of being there. And we need to have all of these voices like working together.
I'm with you. Well, I'm really glad that you had the
Me
time
too.
to have a chat.
Thank you so much. This
Really
is
appreciate
exactly, I knew that God had a plan for me to put out that video. So good.
it. Well, look, yeah, it's just really nice to be able to have like serious conversations that, I don't know, go a little bit further than just the comment section. I didn't read yours, by the way. I just saw the video and was like, cool, I'm gonna
Right. Good, even better. But it was
yeah.
a lot of just what I told you, people, you know, this, that, people weighing in with their confusion and their this. But all in all, it was just good to get people talking. And I mean, I do things like this all the time where like I just sit and like have conversations with people about it because I love dissecting this and talking about it. But usually people are like kind of, if they're not in this world, they're kind of sick of it, of me wanting to
No, you can talk to me about
They're
this
like,
stuff.
all right, well, to be continued.
All right, so nice to meet you.
So
We'll
nice
talk
to
again
meet
soon,
you.
okay?
Okay.
All righty, bye.
Bye.